everyone. For those of you who have joined who don't know me, I'm Shamberly. Thank you for joining us today for the first webinar of our two-part series on Cisco Secure Endpoint and Cisco Umbrella. Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. As you can see today, we're going to be reviewing Cisco Secure Endpoint, and then we'll have another webinar next week, same time at 11 for the Cisco Umbrella. You want to go to the next slide, please? With me today is Aaron Sirocco. He's one of BIG's information security analysts. As you can see here, Aaron has extensive experience with network infrastructure and cybersecurity. So I'm now going to turn it over to Aaron.
All right, thank you, Sham. Yeah, so I guess to kind of dive a little bit further into a little bit more about me. So I've been in the industry now for, I guess, a little over 8 years, which doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, right? But in that 8 years, I guess I started working for a large international manufacturing company where I was their internal IT there. So I got a lot of exposure to a lot of different software, a lot of different hardware. Just a bunch going on, especially with that size of company. And then I came here to Business Information Group. Oh, it's been about 4 years now, and I actually started in sales. I moved over to the sales realm over here, so I got to sell a lot more different software and hardware. And then during that time, I went back to school, got my master's in IT auditing and cybersecurity. And now I reside on the information security team. So we deal a lot with Cisco or big Cisco house. We do a lot of work with secure endpoints. So I guess to dig into it, right? So what is Cisco Secure Endpoint? And it's pretty much as the name states, right? It's software designed to secure your endpoints. And it's an intelligent enterprise class advanced malware analysis protection product, which that's per Cisco's definition of it, right? But it's pretty much a product designed to give you comprehensive protection for your organization across the attack continuum for your endpoints. And that continuum is, I mean, it's the whole spectrum from before, during, and after an attack, right? So Cisco Secure Endpoint, just to give you all a heads up, it was formerly known as Cisco AMP. So I don't know if you've heard that term before, or if you catch me saying Cisco AMP at some points in time throughout this presentation. Just know that it's the same thing as Secure Endpoint. I'm just my brain's still trying to reconfigure itself to calling it Secure Endpoint, right? But Cisco Secure Endpoint, it's a software that uses a telemetry model to perform extended detection and response, right? And telemetry is really all about correlation, and it is something that Cisco does extremely well. Telemetry model is a model that correlates events to information, making it easier for a person to track the progress of a breach from malicious software, right? You can track everything from its entry point, so place of origin, to any processes or services that are initiated due to the malicious software. And you can also actually track it in its lateral movement to other machines or devices within your network, right? So it's a really powerful tool. It provides advanced malware protection for all kinds of platforms. So that's for PCs, so your Windows-based machines, your Macs, Linux systems, your mobile devices, so your Apple and Android devices, and then also virtual environments. And Secure Endpoints is really a proactive tool that continuously detects, tracks, analyzes, controls, and blocks malware outbreaks across your organization's endpoints. So Cisco's tagline for Secure Endpoint is endpoint security that works for you. And they mean that literally. So Secure Endpoint on top of what's called, it's Cisco's cloud platform, it's called SecureX, which I will hit on a little later. And so it includes that, and then all of Cisco's other security products as well, right? All their other product offerings. They're really designed to simplify your threat detection, response, and remediation. They're meant to reduce the attack surface of your organization, and it's really designed to streamline your operational efficiency when responding to the malware incidents, right? Cisco likes to break down the benefits into 3 different groups or categories, whatever you want to call them. But they like to harp on the benefits where they stop threat protection, or stop threats before compromise, remediate faster and completely, and maximize operations efficiency. So those are kind of the 3 groups that they like to focus on. So Secure Endpoint helps to minimize the attack surface of your organization, specifically on your endpoints, right? But by utilizing several different prevention techniques and posture assessments, resulting in protection against a number of different attack methods and vectors. Secure Endpoints helps to reduce the response time of an incident or to an incident by up to what they report is 85%. I mean, which is obviously that's a significant number, right? And it helps to coordinate a full-fledged defense mechanism to fully expose, contain, and resolve those threats and vulnerabilities. Secure Endpoints and SecureX are designed to improve your security operations effectiveness by up to 86%. And again, that number is from Cisco, but it is, again, a very large number, right? I mean, everybody wants to improve their operational efficiency by 86%. But a lot of organizations, they might not have the manpower to do that, right? I mean, that's the 2 biggest factors for operational efficiency, especially when it comes to anything IT related or security, is that a lot of organizations, especially the small to mid-sized businesses, they might not have the manpower, right? They might not have the people or resources in place. And even if they do, they might not have the necessary skill sets, right, to effectively and efficiently respond to security incidents. And that's where Secure Endpoints and then SecureX come into play to help do a lot of the legwork, right? So I keep mentioning SecureX, and I figured that I should probably touch on that a little bit during this presentation, because even though it's specifically focused around Secure Endpoints, the 2 really go hand in hand. You'll find that SecureX is really mentioned with almost every Cisco security product. So it's hard to get away from it, but Cisco SecureX is a cloud-native built-in platform experience that connects Cisco's secure portfolio to your organization's infrastructure. So that's Cisco's definition of what SecureX is, but in layman's terms, it's essentially a one-stop shop to access all of your in-house Cisco products, right? I'll show you a picture of what the dashboard looks like. Like I said, I'm not going to get too into it with the demo or further in this presentation, but I will kind of show you a little snapshot of what it actually looks like so that you kind of have a picture. But it is pretty much a dashboard that you can connect all your Cisco products to using what's called an API. And for those of you who don't know what APIs are, they're application programmable interfaces, which is a fancy term for essentially a connection between multiple computers or programs, right? So the gimmick for SecureX is that you can generate APIs for each of your in-house Cisco applications, and you can integrate them all into one dashboard. And I will say that the nice part is Cisco Secure Portfolio, which is all their security products, they generate a lot of data, right? And most of the data really isn't something that you would need to see on a daily basis. So using these integrations, you can kind of pick and choose what data you want to be displayed in this dashboard, so that at any given moment you can filter out the not so pertinent information to what you need, right? It really is a nice tool to get the snapshot of your network at any given time. But I think that the really attractive thing about SecureX is that you can set up what are called automated workflows. And you can use those automated workflows to perform certain tasks when certain events occur, right? So you can essentially set up an automated workflow to handle incoming secure endpoint notifications, right? Rather than having someone manually go in and do the analysis work themselves. So that's where they get those numbers and stuff from, is because you can automate a lot of this stuff. Now, it doesn't, not to say it takes a long time to do the analysis with just the secure endpoints, because secure endpoints also makes it very easy to go in there and manually do a lot of the work yourself. But that's really where they kind of hit on how it creates that operational efficiency that you can't really get elsewhere. And also, SecureX is included in all secure endpoint subscriptions. So if you have secure endpoints, you will have this platform as well. So this is the dashboard, the SecureX dashboard. Again, just a quick snapshot so that you could all get a visual of what it looks like. The different windows in here. Actually, so the different windows in here, these are all different APIs from different Cisco products, right? So you're looking at Firepower here, which is revolves around Cisco firewalls and or Cisco ASAs. Whatnot, kind of brings in some of those metrics into this this dashboard here. You can do things if you have their mail security and whatnot. You can bring in data from their mail security to kind of see what their summary or what the clean summary of emails coming in, as opposed to ones that are potentially have some sort of thread identified in them. But you can also, for secure endpoint wise, you can bring in some metrics that kind of show you, hey, what threats is endpoint seeing, what hosts are really the big offenders, right? So I mean, you can kind of tell, hey, you got 100 threats this week, and 50 of them are all from one endpoint, right? So, and I hate to use this phrase because I think it's a little cliched, but the possibilities are really endless, right, for the SecureX dashboard, because you can pull in, and if you look here on the left here, there's a bunch more integrations that you can do within this dashboard. So a lot of customization, a lot of metrics. Again, like I said, there's a ton of data that Cisco really generates with a lot of their products, and you can really filter it down to what you think is necessary to see. So next few slides are still going to be about endpoints, but I will tell you that as we talk about endpoints, it's kind of a whole package deal with SecureX as well, just so that everyone is aware. So diving back into secure endpoints, it along with the Cisco security suite, it's designed to help stop threats before they become a compromise, right? And that's really the goal of any security software or any security control that you could put in place is, I mean, you don't want things to become a compromise. You want it to be detected and dealt with before that point, which was what Secure Endpoints does really well. It takes a dynamic, multifaceted approach to threat prevention, right? It uses techniques such as behavioral analytics, machine learning, and identifies signatures, amongst a number of other different methods to proactively detect those malicious files or processes or what have you, and it helps it to respond to those threats, right? So either quarantining them, or if it can't quarantine them right away, it notifies you so that you can go in and manually do what you need to do to really control that outbreak, I guess, before it becomes an outbreak, right? So Secure Endpoint, along with other Cisco security products, again, they help to reduce that attack surface of your network due to the coverage that they provide for your endpoints. And if you think about it, the majority of your networks are all endpoints, right? I mean, the number of devices that you have on your network, that's a lot of potential vulnerabilities, right? Or a lot of entry points. So your endpoint security is huge. And again, Secure Endpoint specifically covers that hardware, right? I mean, it covers that attack surface. And again, Secure Endpoints, it's comprehensive, and it will help with, again, for those companies that say you have regulatory bodies and whatnot that you need to abide by. Secure Endpoints, I mean, they all look at controls regarding your endpoints, right? So things, and specifically related to antivirus too, right? So when it comes to compliance, I mean, this is going to meet a lot of your compliance requirements on top of, again, the data that Cisco gathers and introduces to you, but a lot of compliance requirements need logs, right? Logs, evidence, essentially, especially when it comes to, aside from the regulatory bodies, but insurance, right? Cyber insurance. If you have an incident and you go to file a claim, they're going to say, okay, well, what do you have in place? What have you done? Show me from point A to point B. Show me what all you did. Show me what machines were affected. They're going to want to know all that information. And Secure Endpoints, you can get it very, very quickly, very, very easily. But on top of all that, really, and I'm sure that everyone here knows the buzzword 0 day, right? 0 day threats. So what a 0 day threat is, it's essentially malicious software or an attack, whatever, that hasn't been historically documented yet, right? It's something that is first introduced. And unfortunately, when it comes to 0 day and a lot of, let's say, traditional antivirus and stuff, it doesn't have those signatures of the new threats to compare against too, right? So when you're looking at the things like traditional antivirus, they're not going to catch 0 day threats until your threat intelligence companies and stuff find that information and publish it. Then once those signatures get updated on that traditional antivirus, then it'll catch it. But Secure Endpoints, that's, again, with all those tactics that I had mentioned earlier about how it takes that dynamic approach to analyze every file, every process, every executable. It's designed to proactively find those 0 days or whatever until or before they execute. And that's in itself a huge value. So moving on to one of the ultimate goals of Secure Endpoints is to help your organization remediate potential compromises quickly and completely, right? One thing that malware is very, very good at is hiding itself and dispersing itself within your network. And sure, you could find maybe the entry point where the file came in, clean it up, find maybe a couple traces of it here and there, and you clean that up, but could still be sitting dormant somewhere that you overlooked. So not only is the quickness of the response a key part, but that completeness is also, right? Because it doesn't matter how quickly you respond. If you think you cleaned it up and you didn't, you still have an infection on your network. But one of the best features of Secure Endpoints, and I would love to touch on it in the demo, but unfortunately, I don't believe that it's configured to do so. Or at least it's a demo environment at Cisco's, and I don't have administrative rights to do some things in there. But one of the best features I think of Secure Endpoints is the ability to isolate a potential compromise, right? And so what isolation does is Secure Endpoints essentially bricks a potentially compromised machine. So it cuts off all network access, pretty much any way that the machine can communicate outside of itself, it gets cut off except for to the AMP dashboard or the Secure Endpoints dashboard. And for those of you who have ever experienced a malware breach where you have to take a machine off the network and still try to analyze it to figure out what exactly has caused the compromise, I mean, it's a pain trying to remotely support that and remotely analyze that device when you can't get to it, right? So as I said, it doesn't cut off that connection to the AMP dashboard, and as you isolate that machine, you can still actually do things like take forensic snapshots of that device. You can still run scans of the device using the dashboard, the cloud portal. You can still sandbox those the malicious files with Cisco's threat grid is what they call it, and do all the analysis work on the back end there in the cloud platform, even though the machine doesn't have network connectivity. And then when you clear the when you figure out, hey, maybe it's just a false positive or something like that, then you can click a button, the machine gets all connectivity back. You don't have to worry about file spreading because, like I said, you've either cleared it or you've gotten rid of it completely. But it's just a really great tool to stop the malware that was introduced to the machine, but still lets you remotely analyze it. But again, and then just moving on again, and I know I've harped on this a couple of times, but another great aspect of the software is just the fact that it identifies threats in real time. It's a lot easier to respond and remediate completely if the infection's caught right away, right? Rather than letting it sit on your network or on a device or whatever for a couple of hours, right? Some of that traditional antivirus that I talked about earlier doesn't identify some of those zero-day threats, which means that that software could sit on your network or that computer for hours until either the signatures update, or if the signature's updated right away, but your traditional AV hasn't kicked off a scan yet. I mean, that's, say you have a 4-hour window for those scans. Well, that's 4 hours that malware has to wreak havoc, right? When given that amount of time, malware can really do some damage. So again, the ability to lock down the machine immediately is incredibly valuable. And then Cisco Secure Endpoints, along with SecureX, it's really meant to also help maximize that security operations efficiency, right? As I said earlier in this presentation, that a lot of the challenges that you will see in a lot of organizations are that lack of resources or lack of skill set, right? SecureX and Secure Endpoints really help to mitigate those challenges because, again, with its automated workflows, right, they allowed you to build out your own investigation workflows, which you can initiate at a click of a button, right? So if you don't have the biggest staff or the SecOps team, security operations team on hand to actively be looking at that stuff and doing those and doing that analysis. I mean, you can initiate it with a click of a button, right? So it really kind of eliminates the need. I don't want to say eliminates the need, because you always have to have it's always a good idea to have a well-staffed security operations center, right? But in the event that you have some folks whose hands are tied with something else or whatever's going on, you can really click one click and kick off that investigation. And the way that Secure Endpoints works with Cisco's threat grid and whatnot to help analyze the files, you don't necessarily need to have the best of the best InfoSec analysts out there that can manually make determinations on files just based off of their own tools and own knowledge and whatnot, because Cisco has partner organizations or organizations that they bought that specialize in that stuff, right? So you pump it through their threat grid, which is then I guess their file analysis, and they do a lot of the work for you, right? They determine the severity of it, they determine how confident they are that it's malicious or not. So it really helps to bridge that gap of not necessarily having the skill set or expertise to make those determinations. So again, the software really does a lot of heavy lifting for your team, right? So I'm going to pivot over into a demo here of Secure Endpoints, obviously. And I'm not going to really show you so I'm not really going to show you SecureX or anything like that, just because it's not necessarily necessary for this demo. But I'm getting into it. I'm going to show you around the dashboard a little bit. There are some key features that I think are pretty nice to see. Also nice to know that they're there. And then after we kind of go through that, I'm going to take you through a kind of a scenario, right? So when malware's first, or when AMP first realizes that, hey, there might be a detection here. So going from detection to investigation to making that determination, right? So let me get out of here. Of course, sign me out. So give me 1 second here. Gotta love web page timeouts, right? Always happen to you at the most convenient times.
While Aaron's getting that open soon, I just wanted to say if anybody has any questions thus far, please feel free to send them in the chats, or we could discuss at the end of the presentation.
So did any questions come through yet? Nope, don't see any. All right, so then we'll dig in to the dashboard. So this is kind of what your initial, when you log into AMP or Secure Endpoints, I apologize. This is what you're going to first see. This is the dashboard, but I'm going to go here to overview. apologize ahead of time. When I was playing around this morning, it was a little more sluggish than normal. All right, so I guess to point out, the first thing that you'll see is a bunch of numbers, right, going across the top here, and these numbers are metrics. So first number here you'll see is how many threats were detected, and this is over the last 30 days. So there was 18 threats detected in this network over the last 30 days. There weren't any network threats. Out of the 18 threats detected, there were 18 quarantines, which is good. There was one compromise, not so good, but it eventually got quarantined. And then also kind of shows you here some X-points prevented with respective events, connectors deployed. So digging into some of these, again, this is just some metrics of your AMP environment. So this is compromises. There was one total compromise in the last 30 days. Gives you a breakdown of the events here. So there was an executed malware, but the threat was quarantined. It'll tell you if it's quarantined or not. And it also gives you the name of the host, which is really nice, right? Kind of does a little bit of the guesswork for you initially up front, so you don't necessarily have to go digging too far to figure out who's the culprit. So that's compromises. Then we can move over here to threats. So again, there was 18 threats detected, and 18 of them were quarantined. I'll tell you what was quarantined. Tell you the host for the majority of the threats, and it gives you kind of a breakdown of threat names, right? So here you got some adware, Trojan, more adware. So it gives you a nice little overview of what's kind of going on your machines. Another nice thing is that it tracks these vulnerabilities here, which we don't really get into today, but what that does is AMP will actually analyze files and signatures for some of these applications, and if it finds a vulnerability or a known vulnerability, it'll actually highlight it here in this vulnerabilities little tab. And as you can see, apparently it found a vulnerability with Adobe Acrobat 10.0.1. It's on this host. So gives you a nice kind of breakdown, just a quick snapshot. This is how many, this tells you all the computers by hosts, so all your operating systems that the secure endpoints connectors installed on. And it gives you kind of your AV definition status. So it's your antivirus definitions. It's like some of these need to be updated. But this isn't actually a live network, so I guess that they're okay for now. But thing I do want to go into here is, so you can go under management and go to computers here. This will actually give you a full list of every device that is in your secure endpoints network. And as you kind of go on through here, you can actually expand some of these, and it'll tell you little things like what the host name is, what operating system it's running, what connector version they're on, when it was installed, when it was last seen. The definitions were last updated, so these are a little out of date. Tells you what groups and policies that this machine is a part of. You can run scans from here, so if we want to run a flash or full scan, you can do that right from a couple clicks of a button. So that's nice just to kind of get an overview of all the devices that are connected, right? I had just mentioned policies, and I do want to touch on policies a little bit here. And what policies will do is you can set up different, I guess, different requirements per policy, right? So typically when you have a secure endpoint deployment, you're going to have at least two groups, or at least two policies. One's going to be for your, say, if you just have your user workstations and servers in this network, there's no mobile devices or nothing like that. But you're going to typically have a policy for your workstations, and you're going to have a different policy for your servers. And the reason being is because sometimes, say, if files are found, Cisco, because they're proactive, you do get some false positives, which is a good thing because, I mean, obviously it's not a great thing because sometimes you have to kind of fine tune it a little bit, but obviously it's doing what it's marketed to be doing, right? It's analyzing those files that it's not sure of, and it's flagging them saying, hey, this one is, we're not sure about this file, we're going to do some further analysis, right? But sometimes, depending on their initial assessment of the file, they can mark it as a critical issue, right? And in which case, say if you have isolation set up on your policies, it will automatically isolate your computer, right? Which isn't necessarily, I mean, it's not as big of a deal when you're looking at a user's workstation. Yes, it's going to hinder the productivity of that user because they won't be able to actually work for a little bit until you can get in there and remove you from isolation. But you can set up those different requirements so that, say, your server group, if it does find something that that might be a false positive, it's not going to isolate your server, right? Because you don't want your servers necessarily isolated until it's guaranteed, confirmed, 100% malicious file, right? You don't want your servers going offline, because if your servers go offline, then all of your users can't work. So digging into one of these policies here, edit, show you a little bit about what you can do in each of these policies. So here, the first thing you're going to see is this modes and engines. And what this does is it essentially, you can configure all of your conviction modes, right? So these are all of the ways that Secure Endpoints is going to analyze your files, and then these are the actions that it can take for its findings. So you can put files strictly to quarantine, or you can put it in audit mode, which audit mode is nice because it logs everything, right? But it doesn't actually quarantine any files or anything like that. So if you're doing it, so if you have like a test group that you're using specifically for, I don't know, like a test development workstation or something like that, that you kind of want to see how files are acting on your machine, that kind of stuff, you can put into audits so that doesn't stop it, right? It just kind of logs it so you can follow the log. Cisco does give you their recommended settings, which 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to abide by those unless you have certain requirements or whatever that you need to meet. One nice thing here, and again, this is also a nice reason why you would want to have different policies for certain groups of machines, is because you can add exclusions. I know, say you have application development users, right, that are running SQL, say on their computers. Well, SQL, when you install SQL, it creates directories, huge directories on their C drives or wherever they install it on, right? So if you ever have an AMP scan, right, and you do a full scan, it's going to hit every single directory on your computer. And for the most part, you know that those SQL directories are fine. But the problem is that if that full scan kicks off and hits those SQL directories, it's going to scan every single file, and it's going to take a long time. And I will say that Secure Endpoints at times can be a little resource intensive, depending on how your computers are built out. And so if it's taking 4 hours to scan because 3 of the hours it's going through these SQL directories, I mean, that's a long time for those scans to be running. Directories that you know for the most part are fine. So you can add those exclusions here. I know that they have already built out templates for like certain Windows files files and directories and stuff like that. You can do your own custom exclusions, all that stuff. Your outbreak control per policy, you can actually, what the outbreak controls are is that you can make your own lists essentially. So these custom detections, simple and stuff like that. You can make lists that will do specific things when you add a file to it, right? So you can make a list of quarantine files automatically or something like that, and you can add those lists to these policies, so that when you're making your determination after investigation, you can just go to simple detection and add it to this list, and it will quarantine the file. It'll reach out to every other machine in that policy, and it'll see if that file exists, and if it does, it's going to quarantine it. So there's some nice things that you can do in these policies, but then also here, when you need to update your connector versions, you can come in here and pick whichever version you want, pick your date range and interval hour, and then it'll go out to every computer that's in that policy, and it'll update the connector version, right? So leave there, but those are some of the big portions that I did want to point out. So now we can kind of get into that scenario, right, that I was talking about. So we'll go back to the dashboard here. We're going to go to inbox. So in this inbox, pretty much anytime AMP detects something on a machine, it's going to send you typically an email saying some of the basic information about the file that it's going to find, or that it found, what machine it is. But then it also will add the event here under your inbox, right? And it'll always come up first as requires attention. So that's just telling you that, hey, I need to do something about this event, and you can expand this out. It'll give you some of the computer information, but it'll also give you all these related events. Right? So all of these events that were threats that were identified by AMP, Secure Endpoint, sorry. And you can dig into each one of these events and kind of see some more information about it. But what we're going to actually do here is we're going to go to device trajectory. And I will say that this piece in particular is one I would almost say would be a selling point of Secure Endpoints, because I haven't really used software before that kind of gives you this device trajectory. But what this does is it essentially maps out every file, every process, every executable, everything that's working on your computer, and it gives you timestamps and everything, gives you correlations between those. So if this process kicked off, this file was executed, this service started, that kind of stuff. It maps all that stuff out to you. But what you can do, of course, since the last compromise or the threat that happened on this machine was on October 22nd, you can actually come up here, click here on the 22nd, and it'll take you right to every process and everything that happened on that machine at that time. And it lists it all out here. So all these little icons mean different things, and I know that they have a legend or something somewhere here that tells you what each actual icon means. But what we're looking at here are going to be these nice red X's, and these red X's are the threat indicators, right? So you can actually come down here, you can click on one of these, and it will tell you over here on the right all the event details surrounding that, surrounding this particular event. So it'll give you a hash for the file, tell you if it was quarantined or not, gives you the file path, file size. It actually maps it to the MITRE attack framework, which is really cool. For those of you who don't know what that is, I would suggest looking into it sometime. But what you can do from here, and we're actually going to work with this guy right here. So what we can do here is I'm going to drop this down, and just looking at it already, virus total already kind of deemed it malicious and identified it as garbage cleaner.exe. What we're going to do actually need to go here to file trajectory. So on top of the device trajectory, which is processes and services all from one machine, you can go to file trajectory, which tells you and it actually gives you a map of this is the machine that this file is introduced at, and then it gives you kind of a lateral movement of that file. So unfortunately for the demo, of course, this file only found itself on one device here, but say there was 10 different devices that this file was found on, it would give you a list of all the devices here, what time AMP found that file on the device, and it'll tell you if it was convicted and if it was quarantined or not. So that is where you get the mapping of, well, what all machines are affected, right? So then obviously, that helps you because then you can go out and personally or physically touch all those machines if you need to, run further software if you need to, do whatever you need to, or isolate them all, whatever you need to do, however your incident response is going to be. But so once you kind of determine that, hey, this is the only computer here that's been affected, drop down this hash right here. We're going to go to file analysis. And when you push a file or a hash through file analysis, it actually uploads it to Cisco's threat grid, which is pretty much their they sandbox it. They also have their threat intelligence, third parties and all that kind of stuff kind of analyze this file, really give you a good determination on it and give you these kind of reports here. So we'll do the most recent one. Go ahead and click on this report. So threat score is 100, which is the worst that you can get, right? That's the highest severity that you can get. Gives you a little bit more information about it, hashes and stuff. It tells you sandbox and stuff. But the key, the meat of the reports here is that it actually gives you a breakdown of all the behavioral indicators for that software there, right? Or the file or whatever it is. So you can actually come in here to each of these indicators here. You can drop it down. It gives you kind of a nice description of what the actual indicator means. So for this one here, it says Redline Stealer is a .NET info stealer that attempts to exfiltrate credit card information, right? So this malware is aimed to steal PI, or I guess it's PII, credit card information, stuff like that. Not going to get into all of them, but because there are a ton, like I said, that gives you a lot of data and correlates a lot of data. But it gives you all kinds of things like your HTTP traffic. Is it reaching out to websites? Where is it reaching out to? What the destinations are? Gives you a lot of other networking information to kind of help track the transport of the malicious file or software. Hits on what processes were potentially involved or changed, right? Because like I said before, malware tries to hide itself, and it does so by affecting different processes and services on your machine to maybe skip looking over it, right? Kind of stuff. And then it actually here gives you all the artifacts, which an artifact is anything from IP addresses to URLs to other files, whatever that are indicators of compromise. So anything that's related to it that could have helped identify the origin of it, right? And it actually lines up all the artifacts here so that you can go in and take a look at those as well. But after looking at this report, I think it's safe to say that this potential or that this threat is actually malicious. So then what we can do here is we can go down to the simple detection, and these are all custom lists that you can create, but you can actually, so we'll go to this files to block. So we added it to that detection list, which will automatically quarantine it, and it will also look out to every other machine in that policy for any of these hashes, any related information to this file, and it will go ahead and quarantine those as well on other devices and whatnot. So that's kind of the gist of secure endpoints. So the scenario wasn't super long, but that's part of the benefits of secure endpoints is that a lot of these investigations, it really takes a lot of the legwork out of it. So I guess at this point, I will go ahead and open the floor to any questions or comments or anything that any of you may be interested in.
Aaron, we did have one question pop up.
Sure.
How does this work for a managed IT customer?
So a managed IT customer is in, like, you're going to a managed service provider to support you in IT, and they provide this to you. So what happens is whenever you deploy Cisco or Secure Endpoint for a client, you create a tenant, right? It creates a separate tenant for that client, which, depending on how it's set up, I mean, you can either set it up for, say Big sells you Cisco Amp, and you want us to help remediate any issues that come up, right? So what'll happen is we have a single sign-on essentially with our business information group. Emails, we create a Cisco account with that, and we add it to your tenant. And what happens is we can log in, we can change to your tenant specifically, and we can perform all this work for you. And then when we're done, sign out of your tenant, and it's pretty simple. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Aaron, are you seeing the questions?
We use Barracuda Essentials for email. Does this get replaced with Cisco? So Barracuda Essentials and I guess that technically Cisco has an email security product. It's not one that we use because Barracuda's they're very specialized in some of the things that they do, and email security is one of them. Cisco is very good for secure endpoints. They're very good for firewalls and a number of other things, but it would not replace your Barracuda Essentials. Barracuda Essentials with Cisco Secure Endpoints, I guess I can say, will both of them working together will help reduce your attack surface, right? I keep saying attack surface, but it really it just adds that more protection for you. You can never be too protected, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And there are certain products that work specifically better for certain things than others, and these two would work nicely in tandem for your environment more often than not. But no, it would not replace your Barracuda Essentials. Any other questions?
Thank you. If there's not any questions currently, please feel free to reach out to myself or your account representative. We will be happy to get that information to your questions back to you. We appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much, Aaron, for your time. We look forward to seeing you next week for the Cisco Umbrella demo. And again, that is the 17th, the same time at 11 a.m.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
That's it for today. Thanks so much, guys.
Enjoy your days, everyone.
Thanks, Aaron. You too.